standing ready. Lord, please, I could take a guess. Oh, would you please? We are ready. I'm lifted by the Spirit's peace. I guess we're never going home. Never journey sunshine. Could never be alone. Well, I guess I'm well adjusted, but the pains they never leave, except for my feet. I keep my arms in my suitcases and my shoulders halfway down to the ground.
All right, hello. Welcome back to Slackline Daily Quote of the Day episodes. You are here with the boss.
The boss is coming!
That's a made-up dumb fairy tale name, you.
I want to give a shout out to Axel Boss, taking us in with one of his tunes recorded in his fucking bathroom, with some pretty rudimentary equipment. I don't know. It sounds pretty fucking awesome to me. Yeah, I really love to hear that. We're talking just daily quotes and bringing you guys some interesting thoughts maybe on different perspectives and stuff like that. Still rocking our weekly episodes. We'll have another one posted here on Sunday. It is Jordan Vasquez and Ken Dressen. They're talking their new film Mailman. Should be out soon. I saw the trailer. It had me laughing. I saw a first cut too. It was really, really good. So happy or excited to see when that comes out. We have a sponsor today. Sponsor today is Rover's Electric Fence for Humans. Want to make sure your child stays out of trouble? Slap on a collar and install a Rover's Electric Fence for Humans. It's a great product to make sure you're keeping your kids in line if they're running around and getting in trouble. You know, you don't want them running out in the street and playing and having fun. It kind of goes along with it's interesting. Our sponsors they tend to be on theme with our subjects, which it's lucky that that's working out. But this is the quote of the day, day 2, January 2nd, 2018. Happy New Year to anybody that missed the show yesterday. The quote today is from a man named Herbert Spencer. And the quote is, "The ultimate result of shielding people from the effects of folly is to fill the world with fools." That's Herbert Spencer. He was a British biologist and sociologist, philosopher in the late 1800s. He died in the early 1900s. He actually coined the term survival of the fittest to describe Darwin's theory of evolution. He had his own theory of evolution, which apparently was wrong. I was reading about it. That's what he said. Spencer posited that all the structures in the universe develop from a simple, undifferentiated homogeneity to a complex, differentiated heterogeneity, while being accompanied by a process of greater integration of the differentiated parts. This evolutionary process could be found at work, Spencer believed, through the cosmos. It was a universal law that was applying to the stars and the galaxies as much as biological organisms, and to human social organization as much as to the human mind. Yeah, and so that, I mean, most of that sounds pretty on point to me, but apparently it's in like direct opposition to the theory of evolution, which I don't really I don't really see that. Like, aren't organisms first, like, very simple things that have evolved into very complex things? And isn't that the state of the universe as well? Like moments after the Big Bang, there's only very simple, like, simple atoms, hydrogen and helium and stuff like that, and then they started, like, fusing and exploding and sending new shit off into the universe. Like, isn't that what happened? I don't know. Maybe I'm misinterpreting this. Hope maybe please, people, if you're listening, comment if I'm stupid and teach me, or you're welcome to send us notes on Instagram or whatever. I'm sure my email can be found somewhere if you look for it. Instagram is probably the best thing to do though, because that's where this is all posted. So, anyways, back to the quote. The ultimate result of shielding people from the effects of folly is to fill the world with fools. Herbert Spencer. It brings into question for me things like subjects like helicopter parents and just like kind of fear in general, and are things sort of worth even being afraid of. I remember being in Germany, and I was at this like wildlife nature park, kind of like a zoo, but they had a lot more space. And there was this bear enclosure that took up like the whole middle of the park. And you could climb up onto like a platform that was above the bear enclosure. It's about 10 feet above them or something like that. And you found like acorns and stuff on the ground from the trees, and they loved them. You could just like toss them at the bears, and they'd like catch them. It was hilarious. They'd come running from the other side of the enclosure and throw acorns at them, and they're like trying to catch them. They're catching them in their mouths. It's like dogs. It's so funny. But I stand there realizing like there's just this tiny little, I hesitate to even call it a fence. It's more just like a guardrail that's like a few feet high between me and like a 10-foot drop to these bears. Like, if I was an idiot that went and saw these bears and were like, oh, they're so cute, like, look how cuddly they are and friendly they are, and jumped into this bear pit, there's nothing that could be stopping me. Like, and I looked at the girl I was with at the time, and I was like, this would never exist in North America. Like, because somewhere along the line, somebody would have jumped into this bear cage, and they would have put up a huge like glass fence, or a huge fence, or a huge glass wall, or something like that. And you'd never be able to toss these acorns to them ever again, and like you'd never see this type of thing. Because the place would have been sued for not having like guarded against this type of thing. And at a certain point you have to be like, well, don't be dumb. And the idea that the bears might maul the person who's going to jump into their cage, sue me, but that sounds like a little bit of Darwinism right there. Like, we're overpopulated as it is. The fact that a few people end up removing themselves from the gene pool that think it's all right to jump into a bear cage, that might not be the worst thing. Sorry for being crass. Moving on from that, something a little bit less crass, like something like parents. Like, is it just me, or is there an increasing amount of helicopter parents, or is just like the parenting paradigm, what is expected of parents, completely like shifted? Like I wasn't a kid that long ago, and I remember riding bikes to school, pretty much spending my whole day outside with friends, no adult supervision, riding bikes around, shirts optional. And we're like 6 years old, and only coming home for like dinner, and then leaving again, and then coming back. And our parents, like, I don't know if our parents were like freaking out the whole time. I don't think so, because they loved it. They were just kids that were hanging out with each other at each other's houses, running around. So in hindsight, it probably would have been pretty easy for somebody to be like, hey kids, like, I got some sweet Lego, come check out my sweet Lego. and like kidnapped us or something like that. And I mean, we grew up in Calgary, Canada. It's not exactly a dangerous place, but I mean, I guess my thought on it is like sometimes I wonder is it more dangerous, or do we just hear about it more, and is hearing about it more cause more people to do bad things, like kidnapping kids and stuff like that, and thus we try to protect against it more, and then it does rise? Like, those types of questions interest me. I don't know, like, I think that sometimes I wonder if it's statistically worth worrying about. As sad as it is, like, those things happen, obviously. But like, so do car crashes, and so do plane crashes, and these types of things. Like, I don't know, it's weird. Like, I was just on vacation, and I'm swimming in the ocean, and like, well, even not swimming, like looking at the ocean, like, man, there's fucking sharks out there. Like, there are beasts in that ocean that can and will eat me, and or at least, like, try. And that, like, is an actual fear of mine when I'm out there swimming. Like, I'm thinking about it while I'm swimming on a surfboard. Like, I wonder if there's any sharks down there. Like, but the odds of that are astronomical. Like, I don't think about getting in a car accident every time I get into my car, and I don't think about getting hit by a car every time I cross the street, and I don't think about the plane crashing on its way to Hawaii or back. But all of those things are increasingly less likely, but all vastly more likely than actually being attacked by a shark. And so, why am I worrying about it? Is it, it's just a personal fear of pain? I mean, like, a car accident would be no picnic, obviously. So yeah, I kind of wonder where those types of things come from, and maybe it's just being foreign to the area. Like, you see the people that grown up as surfers and stuff, and they got no problem going out there in those like fucking huge waves and in all kinds of conditions, and not really worrying about sharks and stuff like that. And I grew up playing like hockey, and there are a bunch of stupid dangers involved in that, and that I don't really think about. So yeah, it's an interesting sort of perspective on like protection, and why we feel the need to protect against certain things and not protect against other things. I also wonder about, like, as a species, we've grown these cities and stuff like that, and built a lot of things to, kind of make things automatic, make our lives automatic. Things like even as simple as traffic lights and that type of deal, all the way to cell phones and instant communication and that type of thing. Google Maps is a big one. Like, they're awesome things that help us organize, but slowly they sort of take power away from our individual decisions in a way, and thus breed out sort of skills that people could argue are outdated at that point. Something like reading a paper map. I mean, it's not outdated. Like, you can't get cell service everywhere, right? But we have a lot of people, myself included. I thankfully did a lot of out of communicado like camp trips and stuff like that as a kid, so I'm used to those types of things. But a lot of people of my generation and younger don't really like pick up. My generation and younger don't really like pick up how to work, maps, and the idea that Google, maybe not is screwing up. It's not a perfect system, and it's taking you on this route that's not really the greatest route. I've becoming worse and worse into it, especially as I move to a city that I'm not familiar with. I Google Maps, everything, and it does help to, for me anyways, to memorize the routes if I'm going somewhere. But um, yeah, it's an interesting dynamic of taking sort of the responsibility out of your hands of actually knowing versus just following directions on your way there. Because when you actually know, you can adapt. If you're just following directions, it's like, oh shit, there's a traffic jam here. What can I do? And I'm sure there's somebody that's gonna tell me, well, you can like update your Siri and like tell Siri like, oh, traffic jam, and it will reroute you. And that's probably true. I hate dealing with shit like that. Like I'm sure, like my brother just read a book called The 4 Hour Work Week, and he said it was pretty interesting. It's he said it's all about kind of automating your life. Like you can really sync up all of this type of stuff, and it can really save you a lot of time. Oh man, like I don't know. Maybe it puts me behind this sort of generation, just like I'm talking about, but I can't. Well, I can, get my head wrapped around it. I just don't really, get all these things that are synced up together. Eventually it's got. Anyways, I'm getting way off track. Yeah. Back to the traffic lights and the Google Maps and that type of thing. We feel like now it's okay to just like put our head down into our phone and follow what the map is doing and everything will work out okay, which it does most of the time. But sometimes, when there's a blip in the system, when a traffic light fails, or even when a blip in the system includes us, somebody runs a red light or something like that, you're not heads up and able to adapt. And, that means both like physically, like in the case of crossing the street, but also mentally. I think, we're not used to now really learning stuff as much as just having the Google in our pocket, which is, it's a very beautiful tool, but it's also, it takes kind of the again responsibility of knowing out of it, because you can just look things up. But that goes back to our topic from yesterday about the truth and how to find it, especially in an online world. Yeah, so when those things fail, bad things happen. And if you want to talk about shielding people from the effects of folly, well, the folly, it is in us. And so eventually, if you take that to an extreme, you go back to it gets back to something like 1984, like I talked about yesterday, or any kind of books or literature that's sort of in that realm of just like it ultimately leads to the folly is in people, and the best way to protect people is to protect them from themselves, and thus, and protect them from freedom. Enslave them in some form or some sort of way, whether that's by each other or by technology or all that sci-fi and futurism stuff. But like that's what we think about when we think about the conclusion of a society that's totally gone crazy with safety, to the point of being like, yeah, like I just looked at my at the video camera on my computer. I don't think I've ever turned it on, the built-in camera on my computer. But I'm like, maybe somebody's watching it. What am I willing to go through to prevent that? Not even put a piece of tape over it. Why? Because, I don't really care. Like, if somebody finds it interesting to watch me in my bedroom and the things I do in here, like, all power to them. I don't know. Maybe I'd feel differently if those things ended up getting exposed worldwide. Like some people obviously end up, unfortunately, having happened to them. But, yeah, but it comes down to my mindset of like, well, is it really worth worrying about? Am I interesting enough that people are going to attack me for that? No. Well, then maybe if I don't know. Like, again, for me, it comes down to like, is it really worth worrying about? Like, if I worry about that, if I worry about somebody looking through my computer lens, then I'm worried about somebody breaking into my house, and I'm worried about again, being hit by the car, and I'm worried about being mugged on the street, and blah, blah, blah. And then it's just a bunch of worry, because the world is full of danger. If you're gonna worry about sharks, then you should probably be worried about everything else. If sharks are going to freak you out swimming through the ocean. So, yeah, I guess it comes down to just whether or not our society should really be built on shielding people from the effects of folly. Some people might find it odd that I'm talking about it like this, because I'm probably like the most socialist person I know. But I would argue that socialism, at least the way I look at it, is built as a safeguard against things that aren't folly, things that aren't foreseen, like extreme healthcare issues, any healthcare issues really, or avoiding folly by giving people proper education. Like, those things to me are not slavery-inducing shields, but the more that you go down a train of like, well, what do you teach in schools and stuff like that, the more you get closer to these thoughts of well, how do we stop bullying? It's like, well, should we stop bullying? Well, yeah, I mean, we obviously should, but can you? It'll just will it just take another form? And how do we educate people who don't necessarily fit into our normal paradigm? What is a normal paradigm, and what has this society grown to, and where is it going? So, man, those are obviously big and broad questions to kind of take from this one quote, but so to bring it back down to a little bit more personal level, like, why going back to the bear cage in Germany, like, why should we adjust our society, our enjoyment in some ways, based on a few idiots that decide to do stupid and or terrible things? And I shouldn't say idiots, because sometimes there are people that are exceptions and have issues that they can't help, that end up doing these types of things too. Things again that are things to be protected against, I guess, or could maybe sort of be protected against. We kind of talked about it on the last episode of the Big Slack Line, in regards to genetically manipulating people who have mental health issues and stuff like that, so that they aren't a danger. And questions of, well, then you're changing their personality, what else are you changing, and that type of thing. And so yeah, one like a pretty personal question of like again, a pretty like micro question of adjusting for people who just want to for people who get hurt and sue, and it quickly gets blown up into genetic manipulation and stuff like that. So obviously I blew that topic up from a kind of a micro situation to something pretty big and large, but get back to the basic of it. The question kind of for me is it kind of worth worrying about things to adjust our whole society based on them? Something like car accidents, yeah, probably. Like, if we didn't have traffic lights, there would be mass pandemonium out there in most cases. So yeah, we kind of need those things, but for something like Rover's Electric Fence for Humans, our sponsor today, maybe a little bit too far. But yeah, that's an exaggeration, obviously. But so yeah, we'll leave it there, and we'll thank everybody for listening. Thanks again to our sponsor, Rover's Electric Fence for Humans. Want to make sure your child stays out of trouble? slap on a collar and install a Rover's electric fence for humans. You got to keep an eye on those kids because they get into all sorts of crazy shit, riding their bikes and playing with each other and experiencing life before they get locked into the spiraling, desolate black hole that is adult life. So, thanks again to anybody that's listening. We'll probably let you out with some crooked spies on the other end. Thanks again to Axel Boss for providing the intro. And the quote was, "The ultimate result of shielding people from the effects of folly is to fill the world with fools." Herbert Spencer. Actually, the real quote was, "The result of shielding men from the effects of folly." I kind of like to change men to people when it's appropriate in a quote. If you think that's too PC or whatever, go fuck yourself. Again, thanks to anybody that's listening on the Slack line. We'll see you guys tomorrow for another quote. Have a good day. Bye for now.
I know what you need, but I never met a woman with so much greed. Hey mama, hey mama, hey. Hey mama, I've seen you around, messing with all the poor boys in this town. Hey mama, hey mama, hey. You burn this whole place down just to wear the crown. Hey, mama, I know what you need, but I never met a woman with so much greed. Hey mama, hey mama, hey. know what you need.